What was the pettiest reason you refused to date someone? He didn't re-rack his weights. I will never, for the life of me, understand why people don't re-rack their weights. My new car kept scraping on the bottom while pulling out of their steep driveway to the main road. After the fourth time of trying to be careful and it still scraped. She was a volunteer at the zoo, and when kids asked her questions she didn't know the answer to, she would make something up and lie. Growing up on zoo books and Steve Irwin, I take animal facts very seriously. Went on a first date to the movies. This frocking guy, instead of picking up his drink and lifting the straw to his mouth, he would put his hands on his knees, keeping his eyes on the screen, and lean over to the drink and hunt for the straw with his face and his mouth contorted sideways trying to land on the straw. Weirdest sit ever. He stared at me blankly when I said the word Republican when describing one of my family members. I followed up and sure enough, he literally had no idea what the word Republican meant and didn't know about our largely two-party system. He was in his late 20s. If you're not into politics, that's one thing, but he had managed to live nearly 3 decades in our country without knowing basic information about our political system. My brain could not comprehend, and I worried about what other basic information he had managed to avoid was. Single quote. "'Twas a hard no on my end." A very attractive, fun, smart woman asked me if I wanted to go get ice cream with her. I turned her down, but I guess in a way that she felt was flirty. So she kept asking. And finally I had to tell her I was turning her down because she had both my mother's first and last name. She laughed a lot and agreed we couldn't date. She was super hot, but she smelled. I dunno if she didn't shower or use deodorant, but she just smelled funky. I couldn't do it. My best girlfriend at the time was like, "Just tell her." How do you tell a girl you've known for a few weeks that she smells bad? So I just stopped talking to her. Brilliant. I went out on a few dates with a guy that I had been really into for months. I was starting to realize he wasn't the brightest bulb in the room. Then one day he said he liked watching commercials on TV and that was that. She didn't know that foxes were real animals. She thought they were mythical and just in movies. She had the same name as my mom. Her complete inability to follow the plot of a movie. Who's that? Where'd he come from? Why'd she do that? Who is he again? I just couldn't. A guy on a dating app said he wouldn't date me because I didn't like oysters. He would call me his beautiful angle. He really didn't know how to spell angel, so for 5 months I put up with being an angle. Also dated a guy who wanted to put a single-wide trailer on his parents' front lawn and thought I was unreasonable for not wanting to move in with him once he did so. She would insist on a job interview level of formality whenever we talked. Edit. For those asking for examples, the first time I asked her to my place went like this. Me. So do you want to take this back to my place? Her. Is this an invitation for intercourse? Me. Yes, it is. Her. Please ask again properly please. He wore a Bluetooth piece in his ear. The constant blue light blinking from the side of his head was too much for me. Another guy would text dame instead of damn. It wasn't a typo either. It was every time. Not me. But someone refusing to date me because it's weird you don't have Instagram. He was wearing a hideous brown fake leather jacket. It was so old that the leather had started to flake off and parts were just now canvas. He kept stopping to look at himself in windows and saying, "Oh God, I look so hot today. I just can't believe how hot I look." Smoothing down his manky jacket, side-eyeing me, expecting me to agree with him. I left so he could be alone with his jacket. All the words in every text he sent were capitalized. Trust me, it got annoying. My mom stopped dating a guy because he unfastened and refastened the Velcro on his shoes throughout an entire movie. Edit at the movie theater. On the first and only date, she chewed her food with her mouth open. It was so distracting I couldn't bear it. She called someone a pompous. No, she didn't say he was acting pompous or that he was a pompous ass. He was a pompous. Same name as my ex. I was the receiver of the petty reason, not the giver. When I was in college, a girl wouldn't go on a second date with me because my dorm room was too clean. Edit to add. What I got told by a mutual friend was that because my room was clean, it had to mean that I was gay, so she wouldn't date me. Walked with T. Rex arms. Not while standing or sitting, just walking. Been married twice. Both were named Kim. I don't even talk to Kims now. All Kim'd out. Everything was going great. Thought she was an amazing girl and we'd been seeing each other for 2 months. Go to her house for the first time and it was a little messy, but nothing to write home about. Then I go to the bathroom and put up the toilet seat. I don't think she'd ever cleaned the bottom of the toilet seat given how disgusting it was. From then on, the only thing I could think about when talking or being with her was that disgusting toilet seat. She kept using the word Redonkulous. In normal conversation, I felt my soul dying every time I heard it. Every time I touched her, I would smell of egg, like holding hands. Egg. Hug her. My shirt would smell of egg. Strangest bit was, she didn't smell like that whatsoever. Also, when I broke it off, the egg smelling stopped, so I DK. Reminded me of my sister. She once wanted a burger without chips. I wanted one with chips. She ate all of my chips. Her reason was that because I wasn't eating my chips because I didn't want them. I asked her if I didn't want then why did I order them? Had the same first name as my brother and father. She lived across the bridge and I hate going across the bridge. Edit. Didn't expect this to blow up. It's the Bay Bridge in the SF area. I live in Oakland. For me to date a girl in the city it'll take me an hour to get there, an hour home. All of this after working all day. Just not some I'd want to do unless I was super into someone. Hooch ironically I'd never know since. The bridge. TBH it wouldn't have been fair to her either. Side note, more than a decade later I am married to a girl from the other side of the bridge, so you could say, I got over it. Not me. But someone I worked with refused to date this very handsome, successful and kind man because he has too many things in his pockets. They did that thing where they inflect their voice upwards at the end of everything they say as if it were a question. After about 10 minutes talking to them I was completely done. Someone refused to date me after they found out I wasn't a fan of rugby. His laugh. It was the weirdest sounding laugh I've ever heard. The first time I heard it I was like, nope, can't deal with that for the rest of my life. Edit. Since many of you want to know what it sounded like, here's my best description. It's like he was trying to inhale and laugh at the same time. Very breathy. Like gasping except worse. Every single text of her ended with, I just couldn't do it, man. He tried to say what I was saying. As in at the same time. He started mouthing it and then slowly including more and more voice. I would stop talking and start again. He mimicked the whole time. She ate her peas one at a time. She asked me if I was a breakdancer while we were flirting, like it was something she was hoping for. We had a date and it went well, but at the end she said I needed to contact her because her value was higher than mine and I simply didn't call he again. To prove my worth being the greater. I don't know if it worked. I had to explain everything to a girl. Everything. I still don't know if she was exceptional stupid or tried to keep the conversation going and was just really bad at it. Do you remember the guy who acted like he didn't know what a potato was? Texting with her was exactly like that. He was awful in a trivia game we were playing. I mean, really bad. Like it was his first day pretending to be a human on Earth and the aliens hadn't briefed him sufficiently. Her nostrils were frocking tiny. WTF. He said he'd do a full health check on any pets I had. I was pretty peeved at the implication that I might not be caring for them. Also, he wasn't a vet. Didn't use the turn signal. Ever. He'd slap his own ass after 6. He wouldn't stop calling me endearments like, love, and, sweetheart. This was via WhatsApp before we had met in person, and even after I told him I didn't like it and to please stop, did not get to first date. His pants were too tight. During 6. She would close her eyes and frown in concentration. Once my brain made the connection that she looked like Sam the Eagle from the Muppets. It was over for me. I just didn't want to keep driving to that part of town because of traffic. Edit. Thank you for the awards, but please stop wasting your money, it's not worth it, lol. He got a few consecutive bites out of my ice cream on our first date without asking me and before I even tasted my own ice cream. And didn't even offer his to me. After our first date he called me and asked me what I was up to. I replied, cleaning my house. He says, oh, you like cleaning? I have a house cleaner who comes every other day. But if we got married we could get rid of her and just have you clean. Sometimes they make it easy for you to decide if there should be a date number 2. Giggling. And I mean he like a little kid and squirming when I gave him a blow job. He was 25. Because of his name. His name was Bun. James Bun. There was a guy the first liked and we were flirting a lot and then he asked my roommate out on a date. They went out and she said he spent the whole time asking about me. So we asked his friend about it and apparently he had what he thought was a brilliant plan to go out with my roommate so I would become jealous and want to go out with him. Except I had been more than willing to date him if he had asked me instead of my roommate. He called me a week after the date with my roommate trying to spin some story about how going out with her showed him how much he liked me and asked if I wanted to go out. I told him I don't go on dates with guys who have dated my friends. He was very allergic to peanuts. I eat peanut butter toast nearly every day and I just didn't want to give that up. I got put on a blind date because I'm a redhead and this guy knew this absolute babe who had a this for gingers. Half an hour into this date she just flat out tells me, I'm not ginger enough. Turns out she was attracted to pasty white freckled curly-haired gingers, not whatever the frock I am. At least she was honest. Bloody brilliant. My most liked anything is about not being ginger enough XD. One word replies. Literally no effort at all. Felt like I was writing a monologue. She kept using the chick emoji when she texted and said, "Hello," instead of hello. Her face resembled a chick as well, and I couldn't unsee that. She had a nose job done, which is not a judgment on my part, but her pictures were of pre-nose job and she just looked very different in person. His name was Mark Hunt. About 3 weeks in, I cooked dinner. It was the first time we had eaten dinner quietly at home as a date. His chewing noises drove me up the wall. I no-pet out after that. Edit. I can't believe how much this blew up. Thanks for the awards. For those of you with misophonia, I feel for you. Trust me. This particular dude was merely gross. She thought every cup, mug held the same volume of liquid and burned her hand transferring a beverage that was clearly larger than the intended holder. His hair was prettier than mine. Every time I took a bite of food he asked me a question, after which he stared at me while I finished chewing. The date went on like this for an hour. He had a supernatural sense of poor timing. Edit. For spelling. And holy shit, snacks waking up to this one blowing up. First time poster. Cheers for all the votes and awards. Love reading all the replies. His tattoos. He had this god-awful Medusa-looking thing on his right calf. I went on a hike with him and had to stare at that frocking tattoo for 2 solid hours. I ended it when we got off the mountain. His name was Mario and he was a plumber. I just couldn't. When I found out that he thought lemons were unripened oranges. I had a woman I was flirting with tell me she couldn't date me because I hadn't gotten that first marriage out of the way. I wasn't sure I understood her correctly, but she explained. Because I was never married. She didn't want to be my first divorce. Seemed cynical, but I also felt I dodged a bad situation right up front. Wow, this blew up. My first Reddit comment that started a chain reaction. Thank you for the medals and so interesting to read all the comments. Dated a friend of a friend. She was easily a 10 out of 10. She jumped me and made out with me. Her version of kissing was sucking my lips until they were swollen red within a minute. I might be the only man alive who told her, "It's getting late. You should go home." She had camo sheets lol. I told him I was watching Scrubs and he told me very proudly he was just like Dr. Cox. I thought if anyone thinks describing themselves as Dr. Cox is a good thing they must be a dig, so what's the point? He wouldn't even entertain vegetables or foreign food. I dumped my first boyfriend for holding my hand. Taking it way too far. I was 15. Obviously the concept of teenage pregnancy completely mystified me. Edited to add. I knew how pregnancy occurs. I was trying to make a joke that since holding hands was too much for me, having sex as a teenager would be unfathomable. First date, we went to see a movie. After it was over he got up leaving the popcorn and soda trash. I started to pick it up. And he stopped me, saying, "They have people for that. As a member of the service industry, there's no way I could date someone like that." The gray heel part of his socks were pulled up to his ankles. Edit. A word. He wore a horrible pink shirt with palm leaves on it. It looked like woven vomit. Would have been okay with that, but he thought it's the sit because it was a designer shirt. He bought it second hand. He thought I'd be falling in love because it's a designer shirt and he can afford it. The attitude and his ego made me wave goodbye after 5 minutes of the date. We didn't even leave the train station. IDK how petty this is. But I stopped talking to someone because I found out she was a collections agent. His tongue was literally down my intestines and it was the worst first kiss that could happen to a human being. He also later disclosed that he had 21 cavities in his teeth. His name was Billy. I'm Mandy. I just couldn't get past that. Her house was disgusting. Old food everywhere and dishes piled up. Ashtrays with cigarettes piled up. Another one had ugly feet. Looked like she was throwing gang signs with her toes. Her best friend had a really annoying voice. I am 5'6". I went on a date with a guy whose dating profile said he was 5'10". I was taller than him. Without heels. Which he pointed out to me. He went on a rant about how I must have lied about my height on my dating profile. Because he was definitely 5'10". So I couldn't be 5'6". and be taller than him. I've got news for you. Dude. He asked me if I could please serve him some of the dish we were sharing instead of doing it himself. Prior to that, when we first met up, I genuinely thought I might have seen him before, so I told him so and he replied jokingly, "Do you watch a lot of porn by any chance?" He couldn't drive a stick shift. He bought this small pickup. And paid less for it because it was a stick. But he never bothered to actually learn how to drive a manual transmission vehicle. He picked me up for a date and we lurched the whole way there and back. I thought I was going to throw up. And it wasn't like he had bought the truck a day or two before. He'd had it for months. I just couldn't date a guy that dumb. On our first date, he said, "If you became my girlfriend, you'd have to get rid of the black nail polish." Turns out that manicure lasted longer than he did. She was biting her fork when eating. I just can't. I wouldn't go out on a date with someone because his last name rhymed with my first name. I couldn't deal with the off chance he would fall in love with me and we would end up married, causing me to introduce myself with a sing-song name. I was 14. It was the early 80s. Things were different with names and marriage. Plus I thought you ended up married to the boy that took you to the 8th grade prom because I was a hopeless romantic. She was well known for dating those with disabilities, particularly mental ones. It was her way of trying to fix them and showing what a loving and caring person she was. Then she asked me, and I was both flattered and also insulted beyond belief. Like, wow, calm down, I have a speech impairment, not a mental one. I know people think those two things are one and the same, but no, it's a physical thing, not a mental handicap. Too many compliments, and because there were so many it just began to feel fake. If someone puts you on that high of a pedestal, the only way is down. Was at her place and said we'd order pizza. She literally went to the kitchen and came back saying she put the order in. Didn't ask what toppings I wanted. Any sides. Nothing. Edit. For those asking, I don't remember the exact pizza, but it was thin crust and barbecue base. Two things I hate. But that's not really the point. She could have guessed my preference and I'd still be put off by the weirdness of it. Also, no sides is criminal. They couldn't spell or text with cohesive thought. I was 24 and it was like texting a 13-year-old. The shape of bag he was carrying. Most recently, they kept talking about going out to bars and drinking all the time. We had some common interests and things initially seemed promising, but then it seemed like they just kept talking about how much they liked alcohol, and then they would text at weird times because they'd been out all night, etc. I didn't like his shoes. His shoes just bothered me so much I wanted to kick them out of my sight. Someone refused to date me because I use big words. The tipping point was when I said the word antics. She said it made her feel stupid. She told me she thought The Walking Dead was based on a true story. Dated him for a month. Things were going good. He shaved his beard. I couldn't get over the fact that he didn't have a chin. Another guy the first went on a date with said Arby's was his favorite restaurant. First date with a guy. Went to a nice restaurant for dinner where he couldn't maintain conversation. Trying to get responses from him was like pulling teeth without Novocaine. That was bad enough until he stopped talking altogether and started texting me from across the table on our first date, which he initiated. It was also our last date. *edit. Yes, I'm aware he was probably on the autism spectrum, as am I. She said that they hated breakfast food and anyone who likes breakfast food is insane. I frocking love breakfast food. Why would you say that on a second date? Especially if you don't know the preference of the person you're saying it to? I found out he only ate well-done hamburgers and frozen pepperoni pizzas. Absolutely refused to try anything else. I am a chef. Someone broke up with me after a little over a year because you don't make enough money and your friends are too grungy. I was like 23. Years later she emailed me to apologize, saying she was working 2 jobs to cover bills after her parents had stopped helping. I didn't realize how tough it is. She was interested in meeting up to reconnect. Unfortunately, she didn't make enough money for me to consider it. He drove slow in the left, America, passing lane. Tons of people were passing us on the right and staring us down. I was mad for them. He was oblivious. Her self-consciousness about her own height. I'm 6 feet tall. She said she was 5'11", but honestly she appeared exactly my height. She seemed to take great pains to appear shorter, slouching, leaning against things, even bending her knees while standing next to me. I do not believe I demonstrated any indication that her height was a put-off for me. It wasn't. Maybe she assumed it was? A mutual friend assured me my height wasn't a problem for her, so I don't know what was going on there. Went back to a girl's place, and it was absolutely covered in Penn State merch. I'm talking posters, blankets, jackets, candles, and a bunch of stuffed Nittany lions. I made up some excuse and bailed immediately. She was almost 30 and lived like a freshman with zero taste. I don't trust individuals with too much school spirit, and those who take holidays way too seriously. Smelt like peanuts. Her initials were S.A.D. Excessive emoji use. On our first and only date he wore his shirt with half the buttons undone, showing off a gold necklace. First date. He told me how he worked in real estate, then proceeded to tell me about how he moves every 1 to 2 years. Because he's in real estate and finds deal apparently. Oh. And usually would move with whatever current girlfriend he was with, regardless of his awesome real estate knowledge. The girl would always just be amazed in the great house he would find and want to move in. No. When he brushed his teeth he put the toothbrush back in the holder without rinsing it. So the paste just dried. And the next day he'd repeat it without rinsing it. It didn't help that he brushed his teeth like a bull mastiff either. So the endless cycle of dried toothpaste and never rinsing your toothbrush was just agonizing. I died a little inside until I just couldn't do it anymore. Crusty lips. He seemed really nice in the one date we went on together. Ambitious. He even baked me a cake the next day. But I could not see myself kissing those crusty lips. I only saw him one more time to return his cake plate. The girl kept repeating everything I said, but in the form of a question. For example, I'd say, "Toasters are on sale," and she'd say, "Toasters are on sale?" Practically every sentence. So freaking annoying. He was into city country music and refused to eat fruit or vegetables. Adult. Edit. No offense to those who like country music. Because she didn't drink. I am 18 months sober and that really makes me cringe these days. He didn't believe Kalamata olives were olives, citing that they were too pointy and didn't have a hole in one end. Weird gum to teeth ratio. Too gummy. She called a dude stupid and a defect, only because his pickup line wasn't successful. I thought to myself that if she talks like that about someone she doesn't know, I don't want to know what she tells others about me behind my back. And cut it there. Because I asked her first and she told me she didn't like me. Then a few months later she asked me out because she realized she actually liked me. Edit. My first award, and it's because I rejected a girl when I was young out of pettiness. Damn. I dated a girl who would only eat children's food. Chicken nuggies, burgers, fries, mac and cheese. She refused to try anything that wasn't American. It might sound silly, but one of my biggest joys in going out to eat and experiencing new cuisines. I knew I would never be able to do that with her. They said my cat was ugly. Frock you, David. My best friend at the time asked me out, but I didn't want to date because she wasn't liked by most of my friends in high school. It's really sad because I didn't want to ruin my reputation around the school by dating my best friend, which could have ended up going somewhere, but now that's never gonna happen. This was almost 5 years ago and we're still pretty close. She was super religious. She was very sweet, very kind, and smart as heck. Came from a great family that appeared to be about as normal as anyone can be. But her family was super religious. Couldn't do it. I would have had to have towed that line. I hope she's doing well and found the right guy for herself. I thought he was lying about liking me. He didn't like coffee, reading, or watching movies. 3 of my favorite things. She used Bing instead of Google. She thought, the science just isn't there, about dinosaurs ever existing. She was 24. In New England, she wasn't particularly religious, but she still thought the Earth could only be 4,000 years old or something. He was an older guy. Mid-50s maybe. He had asked me on a date and I said no cuz he was too old for me. I'm in my 20s, though I look younger than that. One day, he asked me my age, and I told him and he was so shocked. He said, "Wow, I thought you were 12. Dude, what?" So when he asked me out, he thought I was 12. He tried to ask me out again and I said no. I just got pedo vibes from him. He laid out cloth napkins for dinner, then got ruffled up when I used a napkin. I was informed that those are the fancy napkins. Then he got up and gave me and everyone else at the table a paper towel. They wouldn't put their adorable, innocent dog out of the room during 6. Her place only had on-street parking. Met a girl that I thought was really cute and who was obviously into me. Like she would laugh a little too much at my jokes that weren't even funny. 2 things killed it for me. She posted on social media way too damn much for my liking. She adopted a kitten that turned out to be sick a few days later and she wanted to bring the kitten back to the shelter because of it. That's not the kind of person I want to be with if they're going to be that heartless. I didn't think it was petty, but she did. We had a disagreement over whether dinosaurs were prehistoric reptiles or a satanic Jewish conspiracy. When I found out she thought that islands were floating. Invited a guy over to my house to cook for him the first time. I love cooking, so this is a big deal to me. I am in the kitchen cooking while he sat on the couch watching TV and my cat strolls in the room. I see what I think is a look of fear in his face, so I mention my cat is really friendly. As I'm saying this, my cat jumps on the couch beside him. Dude jumps off the couch and says, "Stay away from me or I'll throw you outside." I immediately threw dude outside. "Frock you man, my cat lives here." You do not. Ate dinner by myself and gave my cat extra treats that night. She said I was better than her ex.